Hello, and welcome to the Youth Empowerment Radio podcast from Youth Move Colorado. My name is Carmen, and this is part one of our series on youth voice and advocacy, where we will be talking with lived experts on how youth can use their voice to facilitate future change, influence policy, and shape further understanding of the importance of youth voice and choice within organizations. Right.
The material and information presented here is provided by lived experience youth and is for general information purposes only. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are of those of the guest only and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Youth Move.
Hey everyone, thank you all for being here today. I'm super duper excited to get to talk with these really awesome youth advocates and get some really unique perspectives from what youth advocacy looks like within two kind of specific systems, foster care as well as the juvenile justice system. But before we get started, I would love for you three to just kind of round robin, introduce yourselves, maybe tell us a little bit of who you are, what you do, if you feel comfortable, a bit about your professional and personal journey with youth advocacy, and then we'll move forward from there.
Well, I can start. So my name is Braden Babcock. I have lived experience in the juvenile justice system in Colorado. Back in 2019, I had a case that resulted in a 5-year commitment to the Division of Youth Services. And then upon completion, while I was still completing that sentence, LEAP, the Live Experts Action Panel at the Office of the Child Representative, reached out for participants who may be interested in advocating, which I took advantage of the opportunity and started advocating with LEAP. And it's been great. Yeah. So I've been advocating now with OCR for, I think, going on 3 years now. And then while I was in the center pretty much the entire time, which I'm sure we will touch on in a little while. I'll pass it over to Shelby.
Hi, I'm Shelby Costello, and I've been an advocate for about 4 years now. I am also with OCR in the LEAP team. I got involved with advocacy kind of by happenstance. I was actually looking for a housing attorney to represent me at the time because I was looking for apartments and couldn't find a place. And so the lady that was doing my intake for the law center was also a part of another foster care group called Project Foster Power. And so she was like, "You sound like you would be a great candidate for this job that I do." So I started participating in Project Foster Power, which led me to LEAP. And now I'm a part of, I think it's like 5 different nonprofit organizations that are all really centered in bettering the foster care system for emancipation. And I've found a whole new passion for it, and I love it. And I'll
That's really,
Domo.
yeah.
Hi guys. So my name is Dominique. I have actually been in advocacy work since I was 16. Started off with Costa, ended up with Project Foster Power, and then I branched off from Project Foster Power and I actually started my own organization called CARES. It stands for Children Advocacy Resource Educational Services. And I had studied it because there were some things when I was part of this group that we were talking about, and we were told that we weren't allowed to share those stories with the community because they were red stories and it could be triggering for our community. So it's kind of like really rubbed me the wrong way because I felt like our voice was being shut down. And if we wanted to share an experience that happened to us in foster care, that we should have been able to share those and trigger our community, right? Because if it's triggering, it means it's a problem that needs to be fixed. So, yeah, so I've had the privilege of running my own nonprofit. Well, not mine, I don't like to use word mine because it is ours, right? Running our nonprofit for 5 years now. And what else was I supposed to say? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's it. I mean, whatever else you feel like you would want others to know about you. But if there's nothing else, then that's perfect.
Yeah, that's it.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, that the We Cares organization, that's really cool. I didn't realize that was kind of what brought that about, this, you talked about like the evolution of We Cares and why you did it and things like that. I had no idea that it it just stemmed from seeing a gap, a really crucial gap, and trying to kind of bridge that gap. So that's really cool. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious. Yeah, absolutely. I'm super curious, because we're going to talk about different components of youth advocacy. But before we get started on that, folks tend to have, different kind of definitions for what that means to them and what and how that's played out in like tangible, practical ways. And I'm curious what y'all's perspective is on, what youth advocacy means and what does it actually look like when it's done well.
I can jump in on this one. In my opinion, youth advocacy is when you see a problem and it's addressed and fought for throughout multiple different levels of the system and is accomplished. So one thing I can like refer to on this would be the Sibling Bill of Rights. We're still on that final step of getting it fully enforced, but there was a problem with siblings being separated in care, and it was fought for at the Capitol when they made that bill, and they went up and they argued for it, and then it got passed, and now we're fighting for the implementation of it. And I think that that's a great step-by-step process of what youth advocacy looks like in a successful way.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah, no, I can touch on this one. So advocating as a whole is very broad, right? So like the whole term advocating, it could mean something as simple as you don't agree with something, so you're sharing an opposing viewpoint. Advocating could mean you are simply sharing an opinion on something, even if you do agree with it, right? All the advocating really is expressing the way you feel about something to a broad audience, right? Or maybe even a niche audience. Now, kind of through the lens of juvenile justice, kind of how advocacy looks like that to me is there are a lot of processes in place, right? Whether that be if a kid exits the system, is still inside of the system, all of these processes have very few ways of getting assistance to navigate them, right? So as an advocate, I feel like my job as a juvenile justice advocate is to assist either a youth who is currently incarcerated within the Division of Youth Services navigate these different processes and procedures they have to achieve a certain goal. So I can give you like an example of a youth who is in incarceration. Now, as an advocate, I'm not supposed to give legal advice. So in terms of kind of that one, you can have something as simple as knowing your rights. Right? That's not legal advice. That is just fact. So when you're kind of in a situation where you feel like you don't have any power, as OCR and LEAP, we will do projects like we've made flyers that we'll send to attorneys, GALs, to be able to communicate to their youth what their actual rights are and how they can like go about taking care of that. For example, if they feel like they're being mistreated by a staff that violates one of these rights, they are able to make a phone call to have a third party, which is the ombudsman, CPO, come in and take action to kind of figure out, really see what's going on from a third party lens. So you don't have to worry about like retribution from staff, sort of things like that.
And just as a side note, just so I know what you're talking about, the ombudsman, can you briefly explain what that is?
Yeah, of course. So the ombudsman, they are another state agency that work kind of in the realm of human services. So if you're in like a position where the state or even your parents have custody of you, and you feel like one of your rights that you have legally is being violated, you give them a call. They can open a case. They'll kind of assess what's going on. They do an investigation. And then if they find that one of these rights is being violated, they will come in and take any action they can to assist in completing that. So youth don't have the knowledge sometimes that this agency even exists. And then they don't know that they can even contact them. So as an advocate, it would be my role to make sure the youth are aware of this service. So as an advocate, I feel like a lot of these processes, like I said, are very unknown how to navigate them. So I'm kind of just like an assistant here to help you figure out what's going to be the smoothest way to make a not so great time be as bearable as possible. Then of course you have advocating when the youth outside of juvie. So they feel like they're kind of stuck in a limbo. or they feel like they're limited on what they can do. But there, again, are many processes and procedures to help the youth rebuild kind of the foundation moving on. That it would be my job as an advocate to help them navigate. For example, like the Second Chance Scholarship is a scholarship straight from the state of Colorado that gives a youth $5,000 a year to assist with school that a lot of youth don't even know about. That's just another avenue that I've taken on spreading the word out to youth who exit the system, that there are still options out there to help you reintegrate. So,
Right. Yeah. It sounds like for you, it's been a lot of synthesizing all of the information, opportunities, and resources out there and kind of acting as the facilitator to, for that information for young people, right? Which
right.
I imagine, I mean, I come from a youth houseless person, kind of, those are mostly the young people that I work with, which I'm sure there's quite a bit of overlap. But when you're just in these situations, it can, oh my gosh, it's like the process of even like doing a Google search, finding resources can be just enough of a barrier to be like, yeah, I'm not doing that. Like, no, that's like, that's not going to happen. And so like having someone there that can kind of act in that role can be really, really helpful for sure.
Right. And even Google, you'll spend hours digging. Like it took
Right.
work trying to when I found the Second Chance Scholarship when I was still incarcerated, like finding that was a pain. So,
Totally.
so
Yeah.
but
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
And then there's the legal side too, because I don't want to make it sound like advocates aren't involved in the legal work as well, because there's processes and procedures within the legal world too. And Shelby touched on this too with the Foster Bill of Rights. That is an example of some of the legal stuff that advocates can also take part in, because lawyers and legislators do a really good job of presenting a bill and writing a bill. However, without not all of them, some do have lived experience, but by being able to talk to advocates with lived experience who kind of know how it would actually play out is what's going to allow them to make kind of the most smooth statute as possible, right? So that's sort of the stuff there with the legislation, is getting that feedback to know how it would actually impact you. You're not going to get better advice than from the people that lived it. And that is why we work so closely with the lawyers and legislation as well. So just another thing advocates do.
Yeah. And then Domo, I'm curious from, your foster care perspective, what youth advocacy looks like in those spaces, because I know we sort of touched on it, but I imagine in these spaces there is like overlap, but I imagine there's like a different way that you would advocate. There's a different set of principles, procedures that you would use to advocate for someone in juvenile justice versus someone in foster care, right? And I'm curious, what your perspective is on how to navigate that and what that looks like.
Sure. Yes. So actually, I am the reason why the Sibling Bill of Rights was even created in the first place. So
Oh, wow.
I remember it was just me, myself, and I kept going up to Congress. I was emailing them. I was meeting with them because I was separated from my brother. It's been about 18 years now, but that's a whole different story. But I was separated from my brother, and I went up there by myself, and it just felt like that they weren't listening to me, right? Then I went up there with other organizations like Elevating and Connections and Project Foster Card. That's when they started listening. And that's when I realized the power of more voices are way stronger than one, because my little voice clearly meant nothing to them, right? It wasn't until we came together to where Congress was like, okay, Dominique, we're sorry. Like they literally told me, I'm sorry I didn't hear you then, but I hear you now. What do you need for us to do? And to me, that just made me feel good. And it also made me understand that just by myself, I'm one person, Shelby by herself, or Braden by himself is just one person, right? But if we come together, we are a group and we are stronger. So that is why, when we advocate here on my end, at least, we promote, we do it together, and we promote, we encourage other youth to do it too. Even if these youth respond like, oh, nobody listens to me, nobody is going to care. It's like, we care, right? We care. And if we care and we go together and I use your voice with you, then the power of one. And also advocacy for me doesn't just look like more so legal, but it looks like advocate for yourself. If you need something, speak up and say something. It is okay. You're in the space here. If you're like,
Mhm.
I need socks, I need underwear, we encourage those kids to speak out and say something and not be afraid. And also, just recently, we have encouraged children to speak about stuff that happens in the home, right?
Mm.
Because we are removed, some kids are removed from one traumatic situation and they're placed in another. And when they're placed in another, a lot of times these kids are fearful to speak up because these same people that were supposed to protect them aren't protecting them. So they feel like that they don't have no one. So that is one thing to touch base on, like Braden said, the child ombudsman. I'm really glad that they came out with that because that has been tremendous help to let children know that, there is someone out there who does care and there is someone out there to protect you, but we don't know how to protect you unless you tell us.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. No, thank you so much for sharing that. I had no idea that you were the starting point for the Sibling Bill of Rights. That's really, really powerful. I would love to, I don't know, to learn more about that at another time. I know you said there was a story behind that, but that's really, really impactful. And I think that that is a really great point that you made around, the power of groups and the power of like united voice and things like that. So I really appreciate that you said that. I'm curious because, you were speaking about the power of collective voice. And I'm curious, like, oftentimes in organizations, there's a liaison or perhaps like an adult support, right? That is supposed to kind of act as a sort of perhaps like liaison to what the young people are saying or to kind of be like the banks of the river for the young people. And I'm curious, like, what y'all think the role of adults is and should be in a youth advocate's process.
So for me, I feel like the adult role in a youth advocate's process is first and foremost listen. I feel like sometimes adults, they take on this role of like, oh, I'm going to save, a child that needs me. And then they come in there with that thought process, but they've never asked the child, what do you need me to do? Right.
Mhm.
So I feel like that's strong, just coming from an adult role, asking the child what they want and advocating for what they want. And sometimes, children want things that we know that we can't make happen. Say like a kid wants to go home and they were moved from the home for particular reasons. Then while we're advocating for them to go home, we also need to explain to them why there's certain things we can't advocate for, right?
Mhm.
So I feel like that should be another position as an adult role is be that voice for the child, teach that child how to use their voice. But at the same time, we also need to explain to children why they cannot have these things. It's not just because I said so or because that's what the court says, right? That these kids are used to hearing. It should be, you can't do this because of ABC.
Mhm.
It's just my
Absolutely.
2 cents about it.
Yeah, no, the power of I think I was just talking about this in another interview, but just the power of transparency, especially when decisions are made really quickly and out of the blue. And oftentimes the decisions are made quicker than the explanations come. And that can be really, really, I've had that happen personally myself, and that can be just really kind of jarring to the system. And just not, it does not inspire confidence for continuing to use your voice at all. So I'm really glad you mentioned that. I'm curious, Braden and Shelby, if you have anything you'd like to add from your perspectives on how adults can show up in these spaces with young people.
Yeah, I can definitely touch on that, at least in the juvenile setting. Talk about when the youth's still in the system, like when they're still at a facility. So you'll have lots of pod staff. So their titles as pod staff are youth service specialists. Now, they're really just security staff. Like they're classified as peace officers in a legal setting. They're not, some of them have psychological backgrounds with like psych degrees, but they're not authorized to like give us therapy. So I feel like staff will get confused with that and then
Mm,
they'll take it upon themselves to try to give advice when really it's not appropriate.
Like
Which
those peace officers that you're mentioning. Yeah.
exactly
Okay.
the unit staff. So
hmm
a lot of the times they won't say they advocate for us, right?
hmm
If you ask me if like you advocate for the youth, I mean, they're going to say yes, but it's not the same as like searching for a solution to solve an issue the kid has with the youth's best interest in mind. right? It's going to be what's in the best interest of the facility as a whole,
Mhm.
which is fine. I get that. But when you're talking to someone like a third party advocate, it's what's going to be in the best interest of the youth. But in reality, the youth is stuck talking to that unit staff more than a third party advocate.
Mm.
So sort of the answers they get from these unit staff, and let's say they have a concern, they raise a concern. I have this concern. Let me use an example. I'm having a dispute with, this is just an example, right? Like, let's say you have two youth that are having a dispute, like they're having an argument, and then they go to the staff for assistance, right? They're like, okay, this youth basically says, we're not watching the channel you want to watch, we're watching the channel I want to watch.
Mhm.
So staff isn't going to make a solution that's going to have both the youth's interest in mind. It's going to be whatever they think's best for the facility. So is it good?
Mm.
Okay, we're going to split the time in half. We're going to cut it so that 30 minutes you get what you want to watch, 30 minutes you get what you want to watch. We're going to turn the TV off, right?
Mhm.
So, and it's those kind of solutions that actually impact the youth worse. And more
Mm.
oftentimes than not, those are kind of the solutions these people that are seen as advocates that would consider themselves advocates, but I wouldn't consider them an advocate
Mhm.
because I don't see that being a solution that's going to be in both the youth's best interest or in the youth's best
Right.
interest.
And so I guess a follow-up question to that is what what do you what do you see as the, I guess, like a better solution for that than like splitting, because it sounds like the splitting of the time is the staff's idea of like, okay, like kind of like what you said, like we're going to do what's best for this organization, for everyone as a whole, right? And it sounds like you're sort of saying there is potentially a better way to make sure that the young people are having like a say in the decision a little bit. And I'm curious, like, what your thoughts on like what that could look like.
So the solution is you have these unit staff that get
Hmm.
confused about why they're kind of there, right? And it's kind of like I
Hmm.
said, their job is to be a peace officer. If something happens with the youth, they ensure safety and security, right? That
Hmm.
is their job.
Right.
When you have this idea of the facilities going from a correctional environment to a service environment, employ more service providers because we
Mm-hmm.
actually see the service providers an hour out of the day.
Hmm.
Now,
I see.
yeah, so if you were to incorporate an actual position of like, therapist that is always on the unit, or just a psychology major on the unit, uh,
Hmm.
someone with a mental health background so they can make the call, right? Because
Hmm.
I'm not a mental health specialist. I can't tell you what the best call in that situation would be. But I could
Right.
tell you if they had a designated person there and that's their job is to think through, okay, so what is going to be in the youth's best interest? What's going to be the
Right.
progressive solution for the youth's success, not what's going to make it easier for the facility, right?
Right, yeah, that's a really good point. Thanks for
Yeah.
distinguishing that, yeah.
So that's what I think the solution should be.
Mhm,
But unfortunately, DYS as a whole, as of right now, is kind of in this limbo where they're trying to switch it over to services, which is really good. They
mhm.
just need to make some more clear rules on the staff's end.